Joining us now for a bull-bear debate over Apple, Dan Flax, Neuberger Berman, senior research analyst. And we looked high and low, Walter. Walter Piecyk, LightShed Partners analyst. You feel lonely? Is there anybody else that's a bear on Apple? I guess we come to you a lot when we need you. Are you really bearish on Apple, Walter? That's heresy.
It is definitely heresy, and I definitely feel lonely sometimes, and it's definitely frustrating when the company posts no growth and investors continue to bid the valuation multiple higher.
The recent development, and Apple is pretty amazing because for a long time we've been waiting for that next big product, whatever it's going to be, and they've managed to convince people that just the services and the ecosystem and just how Apple is a part of our everyday lives, that should be enough to give it a premium valuation. But now, there's not going to be a car. There's been criticism that they're behind on AI. Is this finally a day of reckoning for you, do you think?
I mean, Joe, I think when they first came out with the iPhone, they were spending less than $1 billion in R&D, which was like 3% of revenue. They're now spending $30 billion a year. I think there was a report yesterday that on this car investment, they spent $10 billion alone, and it's producing no revenue growth right now. And you mentioned services. I mean, the services, it's a 10% grower that probably moderates. If you look at why services have grown in the last couple of quarters, it's not innovation, it's price increases. And this reminds me of like the telco stocks that I own, or that, I don't own, that I cover, that, they have no subscriber growth, so they increase price in order to muster up like a 1 or 2% of revenue. And yet investors still, I mean, look, it's less now, the multiple has contracted a little bit, but investors are putting this like, NASDAQ or growth type multiple in a company that's just not growing revenue. But look, the market is going to be fine without Apple performing. I mean, you can see it already this year, right? Down 6%. Yep. Markets, even over the past year. I mean, look, it's been rough for us. The stock's up 20% over the past year, but the market's up 30 and the NASDAQ's up 50. So, the real... Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, we had to turn Dan's mic off. He's screaming, apparently, over... we had to actually cut off his Dan, are you okay? I mean, can you believe what you're hearing?
Good morning, Joe. Good to see you as always. We're currently in the midst of a tricky period in terms of smartphone demand globally. Obviously, China has been soft. I think what will matter here over the coming months and into next year is you're likely to see better growth. You'll see generative AI form part of the experience with iPhone 16. If we step back and think about what the company has done over the last couple of decades with the iPod, clearly the iPhone, the iPad, wearables, it's about getting the experience right. It's about integrating the hardware, the software, and the services. A lot of what they work on does not see the light of day. You mentioned the car, but the products and services that they do put out, I think, are differentiated. Users value that. You're seeing that in the continued growth of the iPhone installed base. And the other key piece to the equation is that you have this big, vibrant ecosystem. The real magic here is empowering millions of developers to write applications. They create value for themselves. Obviously, the users get value, and that contributes to Apple's growth and ultimately the generation of about $100 billion of free cash flow a year. So we continue to like the name.
What do you think, Walter? Convinced?
And that's definitely putting a lot on the shoulders of generative AI, of which we have no information today. And we can talk about like past developments. People thought they were going to have a TV, and Tim Cook said, "Oh, we're pulling the string on the TV and the car," which never really materialized. It's not a blip in iPhones. The replacement cycle has been lengthening for a decade. I mean, just talk to the operators, and people are holding onto their iPhones longer. To the company's credit, they're making better iPhones. The batteries are lasting longer. The incremental changes are not just incremental enough to get people to upgrade their phones at a faster rate. But look, if the narrative is they're going to return to growth next quarter, like that's been the narrative from the bull side for the last 2 quarters. It was supposed to be 5% growth in the December quarter. Then they pushed it out to the first quarter. Then it was supposed to be 5% the next quarter. And the same thing's happening in June. Like you look at the consensus estimate for June, and again, the analysts are expecting 5% growth. in the June quarter. So we'll see what happens when they report the quarter and they give the outlook, and we'll see if they can even grow revenue this quarter.
All right, gentlemen, I can't even believe that. Yeah, I mean, people don't even talk about the possibility that Apple's not the answer to everything, Walter. So it's good to see both sides. And Dan, time will tell. It has been a couple of tough months, which we haven't seen in a while.